Blasiak, Rebecca Butterfield, and Judy Slack. The candidates here tonight are seated in alphabetical order. The candidates are Kimberly Blasiak, Rebecca Butterfield, and Judy Slack. This evening's forum will be organized as follows. Each candidate will have the opportunity to give a 3-minute opening statement introducing themselves. Directly after this, we will begin our questions, which have been prepared by the PTA council members. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. At the end of the questions, each candidate will have 3 minutes for closing remarks. If everyone is all set, we get started with opening statements. We will begin with Kimberly Blasiak.
My name is Kim Blasiak. So I'm a mom of 4 children in the district. Well, 3 are in the district, 1 is in college. I have a junior, I have a 7th grader, and a 3rd grader at college. So I'm currently on the school board. I'm also a treasurer at Pine Bush PTA. I help with different PTA events in the district. I'm also a special education advocate. I'm on the board of directors for New York State PTA as their diversity coordinator. I do other volunteer work through the state PTA. I work at Memphis Express Homes as a sales associate manager. And I'm very excited this year to run again and continue working on the board.
Thank you. Next will be Rebecca Butterfield.
I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much for hosting the forum. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate you asking us questions tonight, Magdalena.
Thank you.
My name is Rebecca Butterfield. I'm originally from Vermont, moved to Guilderland in 2007, and my son is a junior at GHS. I'm a primary care pediatrician at Albany Medical Center, where I'm also a child abuse specialist. That means I'm a specialty doctor that sees children who are being referred for potential abuse or neglect. I think this professional experience really affords me a lens into the challenges of vulnerable children, as most of my professional life is focused on the impact of trauma on child health and development. From a school perspective, my family's had a wonderful experience in the Guilderland schools. My son has flourished in the Guilderland schools, and we specifically chose to move here because of the strengths of the school district. I joined the board in 2019 to fill an open seat, and then was elected in 2020. I think I've spent that time collaborating with parents, faculty, students, and staff, and I think I've built meaningful connections with stakeholders. I've been an active listener and an advocate for our students. I really love my time so far on the board. I consider it my way of giving back to the community, and would like to continue to work towards that end.
Thank you. Finally will be Judy Slack.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Judy Slack. I've been on the board for 5 terms. I started my professional career as a teacher. I taught for 5.5 years. Stopped when to raise a family. When my youngest of 3 was in 1st grade, I went to work at Linwood, and I worked there for 24 years as a teaching assistant. That's a wonderful job, and you can really see the difference that you make to these kids. After I retired, immediately upon retirement, I was elected to the board and have served here since. My 3 children all went through Guilderland schools from beginning to end, and they all ended up with master's degrees and are all successful in their chosen fields. And one of them is a teacher, which brings me greatest delight, of course. We've lived in the district for 54 years, so I certainly know Guilderland well. And because I've always been associated with the schools, I feel like I know the schools well. I enjoy being on the board and helping to understand what's going on in the district. I am very proud of the district, and I think we've made a difference on the board, and we have terrific administrative staff that we can support, which is really what the board does the most of. Is they give us suggestions, and we act on them or not, but they're really wonderful people to work with, all of them. I think that's about it. I've been retired for a lot of years, and as I say, all those years I've served on the school board, and all of them have been worthwhile. And I do volunteer still 2 mornings a week at Linwood, and I help essentially doing the same job I was paid for many years ago, and it still brings me great pleasure. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are going to move on to the first question of the night. What motivated you to become a member of the Board of Ed, and how do you plan to become an active member representing your community? First is Kimberly Blasiak.
Thanks. Well, what motivated me to run, or I actually filled a vacancy and then run last year, was that I was always already paying attention to the Board of Ed meetings and going to the Board of Ed meetings and being active. And I wanted to actually participate because I have the time and the opportunity to actually be a voice on the board. And I talk to people all through the district. I talk to parents and families and students, teachers, administrators, just to see like what's going on. I'm very approachable. People just kind of approach and talk to me about what's going on. And I feel like it's my job, if that makes any sense. Like, at heart, I'm an advocate. I always believe in fighting for every single child. That comes from my work with New York State PTA. So I feel like being on the board and having a voice for every student, and not only students, but our families and our staff and teachers in this district, it's important work and it's needed work. And it selfishly makes me happy, I guess, because when we do things for our students and for our families, and you see the effects that they're taking, it's just a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rebecca Butterfield.
I got involved in the board initially through my work on the School Start Time Task Force, which started, I think, in 2017, although I might be wrong about that date. And that was an effort to look at start times across the district with a goal of potentially starting the high school a little bit later based on some science behind adolescent sleep. Ultimately, I think Dr. Wiles likes to call it the longest serving task force in Gilderland history. But in any event, that allowed me to meet a lot of people and build connections. And then, like Kim, I filled an open seat in 2019 and then was elected in 2020. So I've served 1 full term. I've really enjoyed being on the board. I've been involved in committees just like Kim and Judy have been. I think we've made meaningful progress in the last few years, and I hope to continue to do so.
Thank you. And finally, we have Judy Slack.
Thank you. For me, it was a natural progression. I think I spent my whole life caring for children. I was from a fairly large family. I had 4 younger brothers, so I took care of them a lot. I babysat for almost everybody in the community, I say, because I was doing that so often. When I went to college, I majored in being a high school English teacher, and loved being a teacher, loved being home raising my children, and then it was a natural thing for me to then go on, and teaching assistant was a perfect job because I was in the school every day working with kids who needed just an extra hand or a helping hand, so it was really the right step, and I loved it. And then when I retired, I finally had grandchildren, thought I needed to be able to spend time with them. I found that being on the board was a good way to keep involved, and then being a volunteer for people that I had worked with was a terrific step for me. So I'm involved, I guess, in several different ways, working with children, which I have done my whole life, and that's what makes me happy. It's not always easy here, it's not always fun, but it does make a difference to the people, and that's why we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. As a Board of Ed member, what would be your first priority, and what would be your goals for the next 3 years? We will begin with Rebecca Butterfield.
Can you read that first part again?
Yes. As a Board of Ed member, what would be your first priority,
I think my first priority would be to keep our focus on the students, which it has been, but I want to continue to do that, to advocate every decision in the lens of how best will this support or advance our students' interests. And as far as goals for the next 3 years, we're looking at some difficult budgets in the next few years. I very much want to keep programming to be what we currently have, so to keep existing programming as much as possible. That would be a goal for the next 3 years.
Thank you. And next we have Judy Slack.
Thank you. The next years are going to be difficult financially. I had somebody say, what programs will you cut? And I can't think of anything. We've been so careful to not overspending and keeping things in line. And again, the administration has been very good at presenting budgets that are in line with what our students need and what we need and what we can give. I do not want to see things cut. I would love, as being a teaching assistant, to see more teaching assistants, but I also recognize that it costs a lot of money to hire more people, and we may not be able to get there. Other goals, I'm happy to see the work that the DEI committee is doing under the leadership of Mr. Pinchnot, and I know that will continue, and I think as the school, and we support that, then keeping our eye on the whole child and their needs, and well, as our mission statement, preparing them to be active citizens in a global community, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think we do it quite well. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Kimberly Blasiak.
Thank you. Just like Rebecca and Judy, we definitely have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers. That said, also, personally, my main priority would be that every student in this district feels safe and supported. That's been those have been huge topics this year with our students just, I don't want to, we've had students come to us and say they don't feel safe, which as a parent and a board member, it's hard to hear, but it's understandable. And this is not just our school district, this is across the state. So that's my priority, is to at least make sure our students all feel safe and supported within the next 3 years. I agree also, we've done tremendous work in our DEI committees. I would love to see us work also more on the inclusion aspects with all different groups within our district. Safety is always something we're always going to be looking into as well to see. I know the district is always on top of that with their safety committees, things like that. But just I want students to be able to come to this school and feel just welcome and safe and comforted and supported and just okay even. And I hate to just say okay, but sometimes okay is all you have.
Thank you. What are your thoughts about the budget presented by the district for next year? And are there additional spending needs that you think should be included? We will start with Judy Slack.
Thank you. Our budget for next year, I think, is good. As I say, I would love to see more things, but we are including what we can. We can't put in lots of extra teachers with federal money, because then next year we would be stuck with funding a lot of extra people. We do have more teachers coming in to help with class sizes in the middle school, which is a wonderful thing that we were able to do. And besides that, I guess that's the main thing, that as the budget has developed, I don't feel like we've excluded things that have to be in there, and yet we've always kept an eye on the bottom line, the taxpayers and the needs of the students, and that's what makes it a good place for teachers to work and for us to oversee.
Thank you. Next, Kimberly Blasiak.
Thank you. This year, like, we did what we could do with the funds that we were given. I don't think it's a horrible budget by any stretch. I think we did a really good job this year. Of course, there are things that we always want to add. If it were, to be honest, an ideal world, definitely agree with Judy on more TAs, just supports for our teachers in the classroom. Also, the music program, we had a presentation kind of a little late in the budget session, but it was amazing just to like hear from the students and the families. And as someone who essentially had their safe space in the band room all through middle school and high school, I never realized the things that we were kind of lacking. I mean, we try to make up for them, but that would be something in the future that I would love to see, just more space for our music department.
Thank you. And last, Rebecca Butterfield.
I support the budget, as do my fellow panel members. I'm glad that it preserves all programming. I'm glad that it's under the tax cap. I, like Judy, am very pleased that it lowers class sizes throughout FMS. We started with the 8th grade last year. I'm glad that it focuses on the whole child by including some support for arts, athletics, and music. There was also some focus on safety, given that our thought exchanges really showed that parents and faculty were really looking for some additional supports in safety. So it provides some FTE for like lunch aids and sort of aids to help reduce fighting in the lunchrooms at GHS and FMS. So overall, I think it's a very clean budget.
Thank you. When you hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do you believe special education students fit into these principles that our district aims to uphold? We will start with Kimberly Blasiak.
That's a tough question for me, to be honest. I have a child with an IEP, diagnosed with autism. My oldest also had an IEP for anxiety and ADHD. So I would like, in the DEI efforts that this district is making, to see more of an effort to really focus on our special education, and like from the elementary levels up, like introduce the differences in the abilities and disabilities at an early age, to where it just, the kids are used to it. I mean, for example, I used to go into my son's classroom in elementary school and read a book and let the kids ask any question at all about my son, and at the end of the presentation, they just thought it was so cool, like the different similarities, and they were so excited to like, oh, we do this too, and we do this too. It humanizes our kids. And I think too often the kids that don't have a voice because they can't speak kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit with that. So I would definitely like to see more of an effort to kind of, I don't want to necessarily say include the kids, but just introduce it earlier on to where our kids are used to it, because usually by middle to high school, people just kind of talk over them, or just, oh, they're the kid in the class, and it's just sad. I feel like a lot of kids are missing out on relationships.
Thank you. Next, Rebecca Butterfield.
I definitely think children with special health care needs should be included under the rubric of DEI. I think, as Kim mentioned, kids with special needs struggle often with bullying. They can struggle with poor self-esteem. From a policy standpoint, as a district, we can work on our anti-bullying policies to sort of address that a little bit better. I know in the DEI committee this year, we did have some discussions about more inclusive field trips that I think would address some issues with children with special needs, but I definitely do think that they fall under that rubric.
Thank you. And last, we have Judy Slack.
Thank you. One of the things that I have come to see, and I think it's being emphasized more, is the inclusion of all students in regular classrooms for much of the day, part of the day. Sometimes they have a teaching assistant if their needs require it. And I think right away we've helped the issue of making them just an accepted part, which is also what DEI, I think, is having everybody accepted into the situations that they're in. It doesn't mean that we solve their problems, but it does mean that we are aware of them and they are included as part of a classroom. And I think they benefit from that, but also the other students in the class do. And they come to accept them as regular members of the class. And years ago, I know, at least what I saw, was there would be subtle picking on kids. There may still be, but I think people are more aware of it and more willing to stand up for students who have those extra needs. And it doesn't mean we solve their problems, but it means that we're aware of them and that we are helping them. And DEI, I'm sure, is inclusive of them. And we're working on it. You know, we don't have all the answers. We don't make everything right for every kid, but we're working on it, and it's getting better. I believe it's getting better, and I'm pleased to see that.
Thank you. Social, emotional well-being, and mental health continue to be an area of high concern for our students. Do you believe the Guilderland Central School District is doing enough to support students' mental health? Please give examples of where you believe the district is moving in a positive direction in this area and an example of what more you think the district could be doing. We will start with Rebecca Butterfield.
It's definitely a problem, throughout the country. It's not just a Guilderland problem. We're seeing skyrocketing anxiety and depression in adolescents. Unfortunately, a lot of suicidality and self-harm. I mean, it's really an abysmal problem right now. Are we doing enough? We're doing a lot, but we could always do more. If funds were unlimited, we could hire a platoon of social workers and school psychologists, but unfortunately, that's not the case. We have some positions right now funded through federal dollars that we're going to be losing next year. So that's something that we really need to focus on for next year's budget, for the 24-25 budget. So I do think there's more we could do, but I do think we are doing quite a bit. From a policy standpoint, I think we could, again, we amended our anti-bullying policy. That's something that could address that. We used to have a embedded mental health clinic that was very helpful. It's just hard to find staff for that. There's staffing problems throughout the Capital District in mental health. We're not unique to that problem. But I definitely think that we could, advance our efforts there.
Thank you. Next is Judy Slack.
Thank you. This is I think it has to do with mental health, and one of the things that makes me happy to see is each of our schools have therapy dogs, and to when I go into the schools and to see the social worker just walking through to wherever she's going with the dog, and the kids stop and they're so happy to see this dog, and the dog just always comforts them, and it's a wonderful thing, and we're very lucky that we had people who wrote grants, and we have dogs in all the schools, and it does make a big difference. I know it does to kids, and I know the dogs go home exhausted at night because all day they're paying attention to what the needs are of the children that they see, and it is wonderful. Besides that, Rebecca mentioned if we had unlimited money, we could, hire all the staff we need, which is a lot. But we also have to have people available to do that work. It's not like we are looking for the best, and I think our social workers are terrific, and they make a big difference to our students. And the special needs teachers make a big difference to the kids. But we're also limited in the pool of applicants, and Guilderland is a place that people like to work. So I think that we do pretty well in that, and we also start early and try and be able to pick the best of the best, if you will, or to get people who will fill our needs and fill our commitment as we see it to our special needs students as well as all the students. And if we help the special needs students, it makes a big difference to everybody because the class is that much better. So, thank you.
Thank you. And last is Kimberly Blasiak.
Hi. I genuinely believe that our district is doing everything that we can at this point. It's a nationwide issue right now. Especially after COVID, you have students who were used to a screen that are still, at this point, acclimating to face-to-face and being in a classroom. And I can't say enough about our counselors and our social workers, our psychologists, our everyone on staff who has to deal with this. And at the same time, I genuinely worry also about our staff and our social workers and our guidance, or our counselors. And I think they have so many students that they're working with day after day that I worry not only for our students, but for the mental health of our staff at this point too, especially with the uptick of behaviors with students. And this is not a Guilderland thing, this is across the state. It's really hard for our teachers. It's hard for our teachers to teach. It's hard for our students to learn. And it's not at the fault of anything anyone's doing or not doing. It's just something, unfortunately, that we're trying the best that we can. And it's just we're going through a tough time.
Thank you. What attributes and behaviors do you believe are essential for those who wish to sit on the Guilderland Board of Education? We will begin with Judy Slack.
Thank you. First thing is it's a big commitment. It's nice if people come in and they are supporting our district, but if they have concerns, it's also a place where they may get a chance to air those concerns. But patience and love of students, and I think things are explained pretty well, like financially, so that's not an insurmountable problem, but you have to have a sense of the finances. So it's sort of a big picture that you have to have, and yet the support is there, and the concern of the other people on the board, the administration. But it is a big commitment, not just the time that we're here, but the emotional time that it takes, and coming home and unwinding from it, I find every week. But hopefully you love your community and you appreciate our schools, and if you have those things, I think it can work. Thank you.
Next is Kimberly Blasiak.
Definitely thick skin. So because we get a lot of comments, questions, things, and a lot of times, like, I'll speak for myself only. When something pertains to like something that's close to my own children, sometimes the Board of Ed hat and the mom hat, it's like, okay, I got to take off one and the other or whatever. But just patience, definitely, understanding, because anyone who comes to the board with an email, a letter, comes to a meeting, they're there because something is very important to them. It's important enough to where they felt they needed to address. So just empathy and understanding, those are huge. Without question, a genuine love of your community is needed. Like, we moved here from Syracuse area in 2015. And admittedly, I had the hardest time acclimating because I was so worried about my kids acclimating that I didn't think of how I was going to. And I had someone welcome me into the community and listen to me and tell me to keep my head up. And from that point on, I felt like this is my community, this is my home. Like, we're here for each other. That's our job. We have to have each other's backs. We might not always agree, but that's our job as a community that we live in, is we're not always going to be upbeat and positive. Some of us are going to be down. We're going to have hard days. It's our job as a community to make sure that we have each other's backs. And with the board, that's our job, is to make sure we have the backs of every community member.
Thank you. And last, we have Rebecca Butterfield.
I think you have to be an active listener, so you can't just take information, in one ear and out the other. You really have to process information from disparate sources in order to make intelligent decisions. I think you have to be conscientious, similar to what Judy was saying. There's a lot of different responsibilities. You have to have a degree of dedication for those responsibilities. And I think, to Kim's point, you have to be very empathetic. There's no room for dogma on the board. You really have to listen to people where they're at with a great degree of empathy.
Thank you. What do you think are the strengths of the Guilderland School District, and what would your role be in protecting and building upon those strengths? We will start with Kimberly Blasiak.
That's a tough question. Okay, this is going to sound like a really weird response. I'll just start with that. I think we're scrappy. And I know that sounds weird, but when we take hits, like through the years, like budget issues, COVID, anything, we bond together as a community. We come back. I think that's a huge strength. Like, we genuinely are Guilderland strong. And when something goes wrong, you see people come together. I think that's probably our greatest strength in this district, is we're fighters. Like, we know their issues. Things aren't always perfect, but we're fighters. And I think that there are a lot of strengths. I mean, I could name some basic strengths. I think that we have solid education. We have a phenomenal music program that, we win so many awards every year. The same with our athletic department. We offer so many college courses. But at the end of the day, I think our greatest strength is just being able to come together when things happen.
Thank you. Next is Rebecca Butterfield.
I agree with Kim. I think we have so many strengths. We're a district that really is always attuned to making lifelong learners of our students, whether that be academically or through music and the arts or through athletics. But I think taken together, like, our greatest strength is that we're forward thinking. So we're not stagnant. We are constantly looking to be leaders in the community. And I think an example of that is our work on DEI. I think we were one of the first districts in the Capital District to have a DEI committee. We were a leader in the community in that regard. And there's, endless examples beyond that. But I think that shows that we're forward thinking.
And last, we have Judy Slack.
Thank you. I think we're a district full of strengths. Part of it is we are a strong community that values education, and I think that's really important. And if we can meet the needs of each of the students in coming from wherever they are, then we are succeeding. There's always more that we can do. There's always more that we'd like to do, but we have a strong community, and we have a strong programs that will meet the need of most of our students, from those who are needy to those who are excelling, and to those who are solid average. We meet everybody. We try and meet everybody's needs so that nobody is left behind. I think we're very lucky. I love our schools and our kids, and I think the community feels that way too. They may question, they may think that it's not right, something may not be right, but if you look at the bigger picture, things are good, and they are as right as we can make them, because every person here wants to have the best for the students who are here, and that's why we're a strong district, and it is good, so thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will hear closing remarks from the candidates, starting with Judy Slack.
My main concern is that people aren't let down after the excitement of the last few years, and they remember to come out and vote and express their feelings. Excuse me. Let us know how we're doing. Hopefully they will support us. I can't say I always love being on the board, but I do like serving the community, and I like working for all of our children. And I'm happy that we're where we are, and I look forward to that continuing.
Thank you. Next will be Kimberly Blasiak.
I'm actually pretty happy that this year was a little bit easier. So after last year, I just first of all want to thank you and the PTA Council for having us. So this is great that you guys do this so people can hear from the candidates. I'm just excited after budget vote day, just first of all, get out to vote. It's extremely important. I'm just excited to keep working and just keep moving forward for our students and our community. This is important work. And like Judy said, it's not always fun. And I think around election time every year, it's like, oh my God, am I going to run again? Am I going to do? We all know we're going to. Like because we're all here for the same purpose. We love what we do at the end of the day. We love seeing smiles from kids. My third grader, for some reason, keeps asking when I'm getting my parking space. So Marie, I don't know. But no, I enjoy it. I enjoy the different opinions and thoughts and being part of a group, and I'm looking forward to moving forward.
Thank you. Finally will be Rebecca Butterfield.
Well, I want to thank you for hosting this event. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you to the students who are on the cameras. I'm really proud of the work I've done on the board so far, and I think I've made decisions that I've tried to make that are in the best interest of the students, keeping that in the forefront at all times. I hope to continue these efforts. It's really been an honor so far. I hope everyone gets out to vote on the budget, and I hope to continue to serve.
Thank you. This concludes tonight's forum. I'd like to thank the PTA Council members, GHS Media, and all those who assisted in bringing this program to the voters. Thank you to the candidates for coming tonight, and thank you to all the community members for watching on the GHS Media YouTube channel. Please remember to go out and vote on Tuesday, May 16th at your local elementary school. Thank you again for joining us. Have a good night.